Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty show. Today, we are joined by Naomi Mathew, who is the Grassroots Creative Director for YAL, brand new position. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about other YAL things. We're going to talk about how people come into the Liberty movement and why people stay. So Naomi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start out by asking what this new position is. Like, what's your job?
Yeah, so I've been at YAL for almost full-time, basically for almost an entire year now. I started out interning last summer after the lockdowns, and I was just tired of being stuck in my house. I came to YAL as a grassroots intern, and during that time, I really found my niche in doing things like designing literature for our door knocking candidates, working on crafting messaging to get our candidates to appeal to just normal Republican or normal independent people, which can be a pretty tricky challenge. And so I've been working here as a grassroots associate full time since December, and then just recently became the Grassroots Creative Director. So essentially what that means is my job is to design door knocking literature, mailers, digital ads, write copy for all of the materials that we use to get our candidates that we endorse elected and to push for liberty legislation.
Awesome. That sounds like a really fun job for somebody with skills like that, because I have none of those. I go and knock the doors, and that's where my skills end for the for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've done plenty of door knocking as well. Door knocking is definitely a lot more fast-paced and exciting than this, though there's never really a dull moment working in politics. But it is really nice because not only do I get to, do things I'm passionate about, like fight for liberty and these candidates and legislation, but also get to explore my creative side and work on creating almost artwork to help our candidates get elected.
That is really cool because it's pretty easy to get caught up in the very right brain type A, like really rigid kind of lifestyle with politics. It's really easy to become just a book and numbers person and not be a people person or an art person or an expressive person anymore. I found myself kind of getting jaded like that. And then luckily this year I've gotten to meet a lot of people who are outside of my old circle of influence and who are, like you said, normal, like people and a little bit less jaded and rugged like that. So it's been nice to kind of get to return to some of my more creative roots, even though I'm not a creative person. I am a book and numbers person anyway, so politics just made it way worse than I was before. Yeah.
Well, I mean, then you're perfect for politics. I mean, it's basically like when I thought of politics when I was younger, I was interested in it and I thought it was just those TV ads, those presidential debates, but it really is just numbers, spreadsheets, and data. It's for nerds, basically. So you fit right in.
It really is for nerds, which is probably why we have, especially when it comes to like the liberty side of it, we don't have a whole lot of people that are good at not being nerds and going out and talking to people, or to your job title, like making stuff. I've worked on so many campaigns where we have nobody that has like any kind of design skills, nobody that knows how to make graphics, nobody that knows how to run social media, like just nobody in like an entire state of the Libertarian Party. And we're just, nope. We have no idea what to do with that. And we're out here like, using like PowerPoint for graphic design, and it's like this is cringy. Luckily, we're getting better. So like, I haven't worked on any campaigns that bad in a while, but it's still definitely a problem, especially with like the more liberty-minded campaigns, that we don't have a lot of this kind of left, the skill set that normally falls more in the left of, you know, the art and design kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it just has to be developed, honestly. And I'm still learning. I learn new stuff every day. I basically just learned all of this on the job as I was an intern. So I feel like if we let ourselves explore different things, and not be too scared to like branch out into those parts of campaigns that maybe we're not super familiar with, sometimes it definitely pays off, and it paid off for me.
Yeah. I have definitely gotten to enjoy designing stuff for the show. I've been doing, like, you know, some logos here and there, and then I think you saw the like the graphic for the episode up. And especially lately, I've been having fun doing things with the Statue of Liberty in my graphics, because before it was just pretty basic of just like a different person's picture there. Now I'm like customizing it a little bit. I had Carrie Wedler on last night, and so I had like a big Anarchy A across her chest. Like, I've been having fun with it, and I'm getting a little bit better at it. Same with like video editing, because I have to, like, it's a necessity for my life right now to do graphic design and video editing and web design, which are like the three things that I hate most in this world. But yeah, it's been nice to kind of branch out and start to develop some of those skills. But I'm very much looking forward to the day where I can hire somebody else to do it all for me again.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious, what got you involved in the liberty movement in general?
Yeah, so I don't think my family wasn't really political when I was growing up, but I did grow up in a very political environment. I was homeschooled, which I'm really grateful for my parents too. So, parents, if
Yes.
you end up watching this, thank you. Um, and I also grew up in a really conservative, really Republican area. Like when I was 12 years old, uh, I would be in a car with my friends, and I didn't know anything about politics, but they would see an Obama sign and they would boo, and they'd see a Romney sign and they would cheer. And I didn't, and I just kind of went along with that. I was like, okay, this is how politics is. This is how it's supposed to work. I guess Republicans good, Democrats bad. And that's kind of just what I assumed for almost the entirety of, until I got to high school, and then I started doing competitive debate, and we had to take different sides and research different topics. So one of the topics was economic freedom, and I learned that, wow, economic freedom is great. It lifts so many people out of poverty. It's really the most, moral and honestly kind, compassionate system out there. And then another topic was national security versus privacy. And I realized just how important protecting our civil liberties was. But then the one thing I'd say that got me to go, that helped me make the switch from realizing, I'm not just a standard Republicans good, Democrats bad kind of person. It was, I believe it was in 2015 during the Ferguson shooting and riots afterwards. I saw, my initial reaction to that was, oh my gosh, this is absolutely horrible. The government, the police, just killed somebody. And big government is bad. The police are part of big government, and they just killed a man. Like, I bet all of my Republican friends, all my conservative friends, all the, anti-big government Republicans are super upset about this and, gonna fight for police reform. And they weren't. And I was just kind of shocked at the levels of hypocrisy there and why they didn't want government limited in that area. And I saw the presidential debates for the Republican primary in 2016 were happening at this time. And I saw Rand Paul, and he was the only one out of every single person up there being consistent, talking about how we need to have criminal justice reform, how we need to work to end the war on drugs, and being consistently small government in all areas. And that's when I learned that I wasn't just a Republican. I definitely leaned more libertarian. And then I found out about Ron Paul, and it all kind of, that's how it all started.
Nice. I can definitely identify with like a solid 80% of what you just said, because also homeschooled, also grew up in a really like conservative area, and my parents also were very like anti-political. um they they were very like voting is your duty, kind of like uh, nationalistic in some ways, but very like outside of the dichotomy of like, they didn't I didn't hate Obama. I just liked Romney, if that makes sense. Like there wasn't that divide. It was just like, okay, there's two options and we picked this one. And it was just so much more calm than like where a lot of my friends growing up were sort of what you were saying, like booing Obama signs and shit like that. And I'm very thankful that I was raised a little bit outside of that duopoly, but it was definitely still there. I was still in that mindset that you were talking about, like Republican good, Democrat not so good, because they're the ones that want to like destroy the economy. And uh, for some reason, I thought at the time that that Democrats were pro-war and Republicans were anti-war, even though we were just coming out of Bush era. So that doesn't, I don't even know why I thought that back then, but for some unknown reason, I legitimately believed that. Well, I guess because by then we had already had 4 years of Obama, and he was pretty pro-war, even though he campaigned on not being it. So like, I saw the first 4 years of Obama, and then I saw Mitt Romney, and I actually credit Mitt Romney for me getting into politics, because he was running, he ran the campaign that I wanted to run. Like he was the he was the example for me to go like, oh, I can go be good at business, go get kind of sort of rich by helping a bunch of people through business, establish a credibility that way, and then run for office when I'm like 40 or 50. And like that was the trajectory that I had already kind of thought of, and then watched him do that and actually like kind of be successful at it. I mean, he didn't win, but almost. And I was like, okay, this is a real thing. Because at first I thought that I had to like climb up in the political ranks. Like I would have to like run for state assembly and be there for like 10 years and then be a congressman. And then, like I thought that my options were either like be a general that facilitates the murder of like millions of people, or spend my entire adult life in the political realm. Those were my only two ways to become president. But then Mitt Romney showed me that you could be a businessman first. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And now I don't talk about that as much, because now when you talk about going business into politics, everyone just instantly goes Trump. And I don't want to be like that's not what I'm trying to do. Anything like that. But I just liked that. I liked that Mitt Romney's credibility came from not politics. That was what I liked about him, and why I wanted to like follow that path. But very quickly, by 4 years later, watching Trump win that nomination, I was like, wait, these people are nothing like what I thought they were. People are not evangelicals. These people are not conservatives. These people are like, I mean, Trump is a freaking socialist. Like, we're like, this is a whole other level of things. And that's what made me really walk away from like my community, my faith, and my party, like all at the same time, almost, because of that level of hypocrisy that like all my evangelical Christian conservative friends were supporting Trump. It was a big shift for
2016 was definitely, I remember I never thought he would win, and I was a Gary Johnson like supporter at the time. I made my mom like take me to a Gary Johnson rally and meet him, but I never thought Trump would win. I just went to sleep that night assuming I'd be living in Hillary Clinton's America, and I woke up super surprised. But then for a solid year after that, I was just sick of politics and I wanted to be done and I didn't want anything to do with it. I'd say I was pretty much like, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I'd say I was black-pilled. I was like, this is pointless. No politics for me. And yeah, it was definitely a huge shock after that presidential election.
So what was the white pill? I really hate the pill stuff, but like I said this last night too. I've used it so much lately. I watch too much like Michael Malice to not just use these terms. So what was the white pill that got you back from that?
So I went to college at Truman State University. I'm still there technically, just online. But my freshman year, I showed up on campus and I was trying to make friends. I was a political science major. I eventually dropped that, thank goodness. But people in my classes, while I liked them, I did want people who kind of agreed with me politically more. So I tried joining college Republicans. It was a uh, interesting experience the first few meetings I went to, and I thought, okay, this is not the main place I'm going to be able to make friends and really connect with people. And then I found YAL at the activities fair, and it was literally just a table with a blank, piece of notebook paper for a sign-in sheet, and then at the top was written YAL, and then one person sitting behind the table who like didn't really even talk to me or try to get me involved. But I was like, wait, these are the libertarians. And so I just immediately signed up. And at first it was just for the friends. I wanted people who agreed with me. But then the president of the organization one day came up to me in the cafeteria towards the end of my very first semester of college. And he was like, Naomi, I'm going to graduate, by the way. I need you to take over this YAL chapter because I don't think anyone else here can do it. Could you please do that? And I was like, oh, okay, I can try. But thankfully, I did. I'm really glad that I did. And getting involved in YAL actually is what made me go from politics is completely pointless, it's totally hopeless, to eventually getting excited and ending up working in politics full time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of a jump to go from anti-political to actually full-time political activist.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was like anti-political, but I think what was happening at the time was at the time I did not like during like 2017 after the presidential election, I really didn't like Trump. But one of the other people who got me into libertarianism, Austin Peterson, he was running for Senate in Missouri, and I I had looked up to him, right? But I saw him like not like grifting, but like sucking up to Trump and being like, "Oh, I love Trump so much," and stuff. And I was like, "Wow, is this what you have to do in order to be principled and to or is this what principled people have to do in order to win elections? Like, no, this is so gross. Like politics is just not for me." And so it was more not like I thought politics was completely pointless. Like I wouldn't say I was 100% black pilled, but I just thought it wasn't for me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I was very happy to find the Libertarian Party because, like most people, I didn't realize that there was anything out there that was better than that. I didn't realize that there was a team outside of the team sports, that we could just be actually principled and do things. And just like the liberty movement in general just was so much more welcoming than the Republicans and the Democrats that I had attempted to like get along with previously. And it was just such a like refreshing experience to be able to be like, wait, these people agree with me on like everything. Like, I don't have to shut up about my gun stance around these people. Like, or vice versa. I don't have to shut up about my weed stance around these people. Like, or the fact that I've thought that we should legalize sex work since I was like 12. I clearly remember that conversation with my mom. of like that legality and morality should be two separate things. And so like I couldn't say that kind of stuff around my friends. They were all like super conservative Republican, like evangelical, like they would have like burned me at the stake for trying to say that prostitution should be okay. And so it was really great to come across somebody like Gary Johnson, who's like, yeah, you should be able to hold a joint in one hand and a pistol in the other hand, and like while you're watching your gay best friend get married, like fuck it, like nobody cares. It was such a just refreshing experience that I finally actually like got involved with the party and got to meet other people, and I was just like, this is something that I can actually do. But I can definitely relate to watching a couple of the people that I admired, especially Austin and Rand, like suck up to Trump so hard that I was like, okay, but are these the people that I admire anymore? Like, I couldn't. It was very difficult to find because now even I have a whole bunch of issues with Gary Johnson, right? Like the Libertarian Party hates him at this point. But so it's impossible to find like people that you actually like in politics. I think what I love about the Liberty movement is that it's not about the people; it's about the ideas, and it doesn't matter who falls from glory because we still hold these ideas to be like our foundation.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that has become extremely necessary over the last couple of years because we've had a lot of people fall from grace in the Liberty movement. And I don't want to harp on Austin, but I really don't like him anymore. Him and I have gotten into it on Twitter a few times now, and I'm just like, the arguing for the trying to justify the nuclear bombs in Japan was like the last straw for me. I'm like, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't.
Oh, I think I saw that. I just ignored all that because I'm like, I don't know about this. I just tried to avoid anything about like that whole debate, but I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, that probably should have been what I did. That sounds like a much better way to live, better for your mental health. Honestly, just ignoring
Yeah,
Twitter
I
in
mean,
general is better for your mental health.
yeah, there have definitely been times, not so much in the past because last year, because I didn't really use Twitter that much last year, but this year there have definitely been times where I needed to just put my phone away, away from all of the notifications and stress and craziness of the world, and take just a day for my mental health to ignore all the drama and infighting on Twitter.
Mm. Yeah, I did that. I ironically did that the day of the Kentucky LP tweet with the that happened like 2 weeks ago with that whole I was taking a day off from Twitter that day, so I came back at like 10 o'clock at night. I logged into Twitter for the first time in the day, and just saw all of that. And I was just like, what happened to Twitter today? Like, how? Who broke Twitter and why? And why wasn't an account with 3,000 followers? Like, what? But yeah, I'm a big fan of mental health breaks from social media. They're an extremely necessary thing for life.
Yeah, and I guess even slightly kind of related to that, one thing that definitely has helped me stay sane while working in politics is just trying my very best to avoid arguing with anyone on Twitter. I mean, I like to say a lot of controversial things, but when
Mm-hmm.
people are in my replies trying to start fights, I try to summon all the strength I can and just ignore it and move on. Just because it's so hard. You only have so much energy in every single day, and I can either spend that energy like working on my actual job fighting for liberty or fighting people on Twitter that's not going to make either of us happier in the end or really change anyone's mind. So one kind of rule that I have for myself is I just try to avoid, for the most part, arguing, starting at least long arguments on Twitter.
That is some solid advice. I did that for a while. I try not to start those things, and especially because you differentiated long arguments. Like I never mean to start a long argument on Twitter. It's always like, oh, they said something and I just tried to like clarify, and then 6 hours later I'm still replying to this person. And it's like, and it's never a good way. There's no reason to have an argument on Twitter. There's no way for the replies on Twitter to be a good discourse of information. It's never going to happen. You're never going to change somebody's mind in the replies on Twitter. Just don't bother. It's dumb. At least DM them. Like, if anything, like that's at least better. But if you can DM them and ask them for their number and call them and have an actual conversation, that's way, way, way better.
Yeah, that's probably like the best you're gonna get from Twitter discourse.
Yeah, it has been really fun this year though, because I've gotten to do or see and do some fun things on Twitter. Like Twitter's actually been peaceful, or not peaceful, but like useful, I guess, is this year. I've brought I think I'm up to like 40 new enrolled libertarians just from engaging with people on Twitter this year. That's, and you know, we've helped like nationally recognized pundits like kind of change their messaging. I've been like squashing beef between two people, like moderating conversations between people, like trying to like it's been incredible to watch things happen on Twitter, because good things don't happen on Twitter normally.
Yeah. But that's good to hear. Like that's good, but I think I also definitely need to just like also try to like at least set limits and time for myself so I'm not just like crazy obsessed with it.
Yes, that's something that I did not do. Um, I was a social media addict before I knew how to do social media well, because I am an extrovert. I am a people addict more than anything else. And so I have like when I got my first iPod, I have just been constantly aware of people needing me, but they don't like, but that's not really what it is. That's what it kind of feels like, you know, when somebody messages you, like you need to respond like right here, right now, like you got to be on your game. Like I always have my shit on me, like so that I tried to never let texts go more than like 10 minutes unread and unanswered. And like I was just like that, and like constantly interacting in comments because I was such an extrovert and I was so just like addicted to engaging with other humans and incapable of just like being alone and by myself for like 10 minutes and just like sitting in silence. And then fast forward a bunch of years, now my Twitter blows up all day, every day. I get like 1,000 notifications a day minimum. And if I wanted to, like I could really, like I could be just giving my addiction everything it needs all day. And I definitely do that some days where I will sit here for like 3 hours straight and just be bouncing around between DMs and like replies and this conversation and that one, and just on social media all day. And I can justify it because I'm promoting my podcast, or I'm promoting a candidate, or I'm you know, winning people over to the LP, or I'm, you know, helping people get involved with YAL or other organizations like that. And I can justify my obsessiveness over social media really easily right now. And it was a thing that I had to like hard stop. And it was literally like a week ago where I was just like, okay, dude, you need to knock this off because you are going to just spiral out. Like it's going to happen. So you need to, like you said, set those time limits, set boundaries, be okay with letting your DMs go a day and a half without being answered, because shit happens and people are understanding. And so you need to just turn off your phone for a day and just live.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's I definitely have enjoyed getting to know all of the different like subsets of the Liberty movement though over the last year and a half. Has really been how I've gotten more engaged. And I got to know, I worked with Tulsi, and so I got to know kind of like some more like
Okay.
left libertarian people who I had never really gotten to meet. I didn't know any left libertarians really until I worked for her. And then then I went almost right from her campaign to Yale. So it was a pretty big flip flop of going from Democrat to Republican, even though they were both kind of liberty and in a similar mindset, but like flip flopping to the complete other party. So knocking on like hard right winger like MAGA people's doors all day instead of like a bunch of lefties from uh, who knows where. It was very interesting to get to see the people though in those groups, because especially like Young Americans for Liberty, there's just my house in Michigan was 8 people and none of us agreed on anything. Like I
What?
think I think I know just. Oh, go ahead. I think there's a lag.
Yeah, you're frozen up for a bit, but
Um, yeah, my internet has not been doing great today. I'm not sure why, but so much fun. But what were you gonna ask?
oh, I was asking which campaign were you on in Michigan?
Chase Turner with Justin Jackson.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it.
Justin, awesome dude. Love that guy.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, now he works at Yale HQ,
Actually,
so get to hang out with him all day.
I'm kind of jealous. I was scrolling through to see if you to find a picture for the episode graphic, and I saw one of you guys together, and I was like, hey, I know those guys. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Justin was one of the best bosses I've ever had the pleasure of working for by far. In politics or out of politics, he was just a genuinely good person, which is kind of rare in this world.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, what is your favorite part about working for Young Americans for Liberty?
My favorite part is that there's always something happening. So, what I absolutely the worst thing in the world for me is being bored, right? The reason that my YAL chapter was so successful on my college campus is because I would just get bored. I would do some crazy thing like a crazy free speech event, a free Hong Kong event, an AR-15 giveaway, just because I was bored constantly and I just wanted things to be happening. And working at YAL, there's always new things happening. So it definitely can lead to stress at times, especially during the general election and during election season. But I really like working
Mm-hmm.
in an environment where there's just always new things happening. And, maybe those things are challenging, but it's a cool opportunity to, try to fix these problems that arise. And then I'd say the other part um, that I really appreciate about working in YAL is actually getting to see the real world impacts of the things I do day to day. So one of my absolute favorite things is when a rhino politician or some establishment hack gets a mailer that I made and wrote and sees it and goes on Facebook going absolutely insane because they're just so upset at the mailers, or they're upset at like these door knockers in their districts forcing them to actually take a stand for constitutional carry. It's always exciting, and it's fun getting to see the impacts that your work is doing for liberty.
That is awesome. That is something that I feel like is kind of rare in most jobs. You don't get to really see the direct impact that you have on like a society or a community the way that you do in this kind of a gig. So it's really a fun time. I the pissing people off though. I haven't gotten to experience that like that, but that does sound like a lot of fun to be the
Yeah,
person that's getting them all riled up.
I'm not a confrontational person. Like, I don't like to argue in real life. I always try to be really polite to people, but in politics, some people just kind of deserve confrontation, and it's cool to be actually practicing the confrontational model of politics and quote unquote scaring bad politicians into voting correctly, or replacing bad politicians by primarying them or making them lose their general election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember very distinctly one tweet from you that was something about like time to go scare some politicians into voting correctly. And I'm pretty sure that was the day I messaged you and asked you to come on the show, because I was like, okay, I need to talk to this girl. Or it was shortly thereafter. I was like, okay, I've been following you for long enough. I know you have awesome hot takes. I need to get you on the show and see exactly what's behind all those hot takes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of worried that all these tweets are gonna like come back for me in the future. Like, oh, she's scaring politicians. Is she inciting violence? Did she incite the newest riot or whatever? But really, honestly, what I mean by that is making honestly, politicians and political parties are honestly just tools for people to use. Like, I truly, like, I know I work mostly within the Republican Party, but really I don't see myself as a huge Republican. I just see the Republican Party as the best tool that I have right now to make change. And so I'm willing to go out there and hold these bad Republicans and bad politicians accountable and scare them, not by like actually threatening them with like violence or anything like that, but threatening to let their constituents know that they're not, standing up for their promises to fight for their Second Amendment rights, and or challenging them by finding a primary challenger for their next election so they might not win, and hopefully make those people vote better or eventually just replace them.
Yeah, scaring politicians is something that is necessary. Like, that's the only way that it works. That's the only possible way that our representative republic maintains, is if the government is scared of its people. Like, that's how it works. V for Vendetta is like one of my favorite movies. And they did a really good job at removing that failsafe by making it seem like we're bad people for this kind of stuff, because we're either dissenters from the party, or we're, like you said, like inciting like violence or confrontation with these people and just like being aggressive for no reason or whatever. It's like, no, we're being aggressive because you're stripping us of our rights on a daily basis. Like, that's a reason to be aggressive.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wish more people had the ability to, and like the knowledge, I guess, to stick up for that kind of stuff, but guess that's kind of where we come in, is helping educate people in these issues, because like I'm really like hyper political, and I still don't even have a clue what my congressman's voting record is really like. You know,
No.
I really could care less.
Yeah, at this point, I've just kind of given up on trying to influence my congressman in any way. I'm in Paul Ryan's old district, and the guy who replaced him is literally just a clone. Like, they look exactly the same. He's Paul Ryan's old staffer. I'm pretty sure they probably vote exactly the same way, and if I'm probably not going to have much of an impact on him no matter what I do. So I definitely feel you there.
Yeah, I also really liked Paul Ryan in 2012. That was my
No,
political takes in 2012 were terrible. I was a huge Paul Ryan fan.
see, yeah, I liked him too, but I didn't know anything about politics at the time. I was just like, whoa, that's my congressman. He could be vice president. I should support him.
The VP debate between him and Biden was my favorite thing to ever happen in politics up until that point. Just watching him absolutely destroy Joe Biden, to where like all Biden could do in response was just laugh. Like half the time, it is all he was just laughing at everything Paul said and had no rebuttals and no comebacks. And it was just a glorious debate.
Isn't
And I
that
was like,
what
yeah, this guy's gonna be our VP.
isn't that literally what Kamala Harris does right now though? Like just laugh at literally everything.
It seems to be the Democrat MO, I guess, now is just laugh.
Yeah, you lock thousands of people up for nonviolent offenses. Laugh and deflect.
Laugh and deflect. That's a good motto, though. Like, if you want to be a shitty politician, like
Yeah,
laugh and deflect. That's good.
it works, so I can't blame them.
Yeah, it is tough trying to like walk that line of like bad politics for good reasons kind of stuff, of like, when is deflecting or redirecting a question okay, and when is it being a bad politician that's not being honest and answering the questions. I was actually having a conversation with my candidate the other day. I'm working with Stacey Pressman for mayor of New York City, and we were talking about like, she kept asking like, well, what if I get asked like this kind of question or this kind of question, and we were in a policy meeting, so we were trying to like figure out like the answer to a bunch of these questions, until I brought up the point of like, you don't really have to answer all of these questions. Like, you have a platform, and if you get asked a question that doesn't fit under that platform, find a way to make it fit under that
Yeah,
platform. Start to answer it a little bit and then redirect to something else. And especially because she's got a fairly widespread platform, where like one of her main pillars is like a happy and healthy New York, that's about like mental health on a very widespread, or mental and physical health on just like a very wide net of issues. It's pretty easy to make most of these problems a mental health issue. Like, that is what a lot of these things are, like drug addiction, homelessness. Like, a lot of these things are more of a mental health and public safety crisis. It's pretty easy to redirect back to that platform plank, no matter what question you get asked. So
yeah,
we don't have to waste 50 hours of policy meetings trying to come up with answers to questions you haven't even been asked yet, just in case. That's not how politics works. But at the same time, she felt like that would be super disingenuous and didn't want to be like that kind of a politician. And I get that too. So it's a weird line to walk.
that's definitely, as someone who has worked with lots and lots of candidates, has tried to train lots and lots of candidates, that's definitely the biggest problem people in the whole liberty movement face is we really aren't politicians, and we don't want to be politicians, right? We don't want to be asking people for large amounts of money. We don't
Mhm.
want to be, super polished and professional and maybe dodging questions, right? But ultimately, if you do want, there's a reason that the establishment and all the successful people are doing that, and it's because that's what works and what helped get them into office. And so the biggest challenge is trying to, use these tactics that maybe our opponents have without becoming completely like them, and use those tactics in a way that benefits liberty as opposed to just more government.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like the biggest difference is are you being like honest and or just honest? Like are you being honest and genuine about this stuff? Cuz when like Biden redirects a question, it's like a serious question that he's redirecting to some divisive bullshit. Where with us, it's a divisive bullshit question that we're redirecting to some real policy normally. It's kind of the opposite effect, but yeah, it looks the same if you want to be really objective about it. But yeah, it's hard for a bunch of like stoner anarchists to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, let me put on a suit and tie and go do a press conference.
Mhm.
I mean, it's easy for me. I love suits and ties. So, but for most people,
A
it's
lot
not
of
as
a
easy,
lot of libertarians don't.
right? More Hawaiian shirts are a
Mhm.
little bit more popular. So I'm assuming that I will be seeing you at Revolution 2021.
That's the plan.
Okay. There still aren't any like speakers announced for that yet, are there?
So they just started sending they at this point they've just invited speakers. They haven't officially announced or officially confirmed any, but there's a list of people that have been invited. Off the top of my head, I know it's Ron, Rand, Massey, and kind of just the standard Liberty lineup.
Hmm.
I don't know the rest off the top of my head though.
I am super stoked because I was really, really excited for Mobilize,
Same.
and that was like a huge hurt that crushed my soul for a little bit.
It it was absolutely insane. So during my internship, one of my jobs was to call all of our Hazlitt legislator, people in our Hazlitt coalition, so these state reps that we've elected at Yale. There were, I think I called over like 100, and to book their flights to mobilize. And a lot of them were like, "Oh, is this happening? Is this?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's happening," because everyone was saying like, "Yes, it's definitely happening." And then I
Mhm.
remember we were the Monday before 2 days out from Mobilize, there was a staff meeting to go through what all of our roles were going to be at Mobilize. And so I was excited for that. The meeting got pushed back, and I was like, okay, well, must just be, I don't know what that is. But we eventually got to the meeting, and the first thing, they didn't even announce like Mobilize was canceled. The first thing that the execs just said was like, okay, so we're trying to make this work, but like the venue's not going to let us. And so it sucks that it was like, I don't know if I can really describe it, but it was just terrible hearing that it was just canceled like that 2 days out because no one was expecting it. Like there were people crying because they had spent so much effort recruiting tons and tons of people to come. So I was very
Mhm.
upset. Everyone was very upset at the city of Dallas. Um, but thankfully, this year it's going to be in Florida, which I don't expect will suddenly shut down our event with 2 days' notice. I have a bit more hope for Ron DeSantis and the whole Florida crew.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not hard to be better than Abbott, but he definitely is.
Definitely.
Uh, yeah, I couldn't imagine having put in like that much work into Mobilize and then having that happen. Like I was just excited to go. Like so I couldn't imagine having been part of the team that built it.
Right. And for me, it wasn't even that bad. Like, I had to cancel a bunch of flights. That was pretty much it. Like, I know the people who were mainly working on campus had to talk to the hundreds and hundreds of people they had recruited and registered and signed up and explain to everyone what was going on at the time. And as
Mm.
I was the chapter president, I was a state chair, and so I know how difficult it is to recruit for these things, and then to have it just
Mhm.
completely fall apart 2 days beforehand was crazy. Thankfully, almost everyone that I talked to, no one was really upset at, YAL or even the hotel venue. They were pretty much upset at the city of Dallas for literally going back on their word 2 days before the event. And my friends who I had recruited to go to Mobilize, they just signed up for Revolution without me even asking them because they were just cannot wait for an in-person conference, something to see all their Liberty friends at. So it definitely was a big
Yeah.
disappointment, but now I'm just even more excited for Revolution.
Yeah, this year is gonna be really fun because I've got there's Revolution, there's Freedom Fest and Pork Fest that I'm all gonna attend this year, and I've never attended any of these things. I've never been to any of the Yalcons or any. I've never been to any libertarian convention or conference or liberty movement anything big
Really?
like nationally. I've never even been to my own LP state convention until last year when it was online. So I've actually I've the biggest thing I've gone to is like city conventions in New York, and that's about it. And that's like 50 people, so that's not a huge deal. So this year is going to be a lot more fun because I'm going to all of these conventions and festivals and just meeting like all of these people who I've just idolized for almost a decade now, and it's going to be a really fun year. This is going to be a good summer.
Yeah, the conventions are a lot of fun because you finally get to meet those people that you maybe have known online, but you get to see everyone in person. It's
Mhm.
just a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think like we were saying earlier, like the online thing can be so toxic, but you do meet a lot of friends and a lot of people, but it's you really need to take that off the social media and off of the online thing and make it like a real friendship because it's so easy to feel like you're real friends with people who you've like never actually interacted with outside of like a public forum. Like
Hmm.
half these people I've never even like DM'd and like had a one-on-one conversation with, but I consider them friends, and it's weird. So you need that like in person like connection to finally, I think, root that friendship permanently and make it a real friendship.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a fun time finally getting to meet all of these people because even like last year I actually got involved in YAL and met a whole bunch of people online at least, and was like super stoked to actually meet them all finally. And since then I've only met more people online. Like my circle of influence has only grown, and so there's just so many more people on the to-do list of like uh finally getting to meet them.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
important.
I'm excited to meet a lot of people as well.
So I mentioned at the beginning that we were going to talk about what keeps you going. Where but you kind of touched on it a little bit. So I'm curious, outside of like the actual like political impact that you have, is there like something about like your personal life trajectory that's keeping you in this field?
Um, in like the in like the field of work or just in politics in general?
Um, hmm. Question about the questions are always fun. Um, I guess just politics in general. Like, is this the career path that you want to maintain and like build your life around?
I don't know that I want to stay in politics forever just because it does take a lot out of you. And there's always it's fun and exciting right now, but I've definitely thought about, maybe in the future I'd want to get out of politics and go more into the private sector or more on the business side. I don't want to rule anything out. Right now, I absolutely love working in politics because the world is just absolutely insane. Uh, but when the lockdowns were happening last year, I couldn't believe it. When, people I know have gotten in trouble for drug use and when all these horrible things are happening to people around me, it's really easy to just sit there and kind of, I don't want to say get black pilled, but kind of just feel hopeless and like there's no way out. But what I really appreciate about working in politics is being able to actually see the things that I'm doing make a difference, actually create tangible results and create a more free world. And that's kept me hopeful and optimistic about the future, even despite all of the crazy challenges that we're constantly facing.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's nice to get those white pills every once in a while. uh, so if you were to step out of it, what kind of a job do you think you would want to end up in later on?
Probably either like graphic design for a business, on, not political, but maybe just a freelance graphic designer. Or I've thought about being an economist because the business economics side interested me. The one issue there is I really don't enjoy math or statistics a lot. But if I ever really, really want to leave politics and go into the business and economics side, I think I could get over that fear and maybe get involved in that.
That would be dope. We need some new economists because like Marx and Hayek and Mises are all kind of outdated
Hmm.
by like a long time.
Yeah, we need some new, I guess we always have new liberty politicians, but I can't really think of any mainstream economists right now that are super liberty. At least none really stick out to me. And I don't know if that's just because we don't really pay a lot of attention to mainstream economists, or maybe they don't become super famous until after they've written a bunch of books. But we definitely do need more liberty economists.
Hmm. I, it's an interesting world that we live in now because we hold up these books from like forever ago to like such a lofty ideal, and it's a weird thing, but I can like my brain does this too. Like I'll see a like a Rothbard book, and then I would like see a clip from Michael Malice, and I would just assume that the Rothbard book is better and more intelligent, like because it's a book from for like if by an old famous person that like was really smart, and so this must be true. But if you really think about it, you have a better chance of learning something accurate from a YouTube video nowadays, like Malice or like Dave Smith or like so many other people online. I'm not going to talk about myself because I'm not putting myself in that category in any way. Like there's people out there who are talking this stuff, but they're doing it in a modern way, and somehow modern doesn't seem as intelligent.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just from school and education, everything that's really old seems really sophisticated and smart. And then if it's on your smartphone, it's not. So I can
Mhm.
definitely relate to feeling like that. But I definitely agree with you there. Like what got me into Liberty wasn't just sitting down and as a 15-year-old reading a Rothbard book or reading Thomas Sowell. It was seeing YouTube clips of Rand Paul and Ron Paul.
Mhm.
So Though I do think there is with books, you do get deeper into arguments than you would on, say, a presidential debate stage or on Twitter. So they definitely, you're able to delve kind of deeper into the arguments and have a better foundation for your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of getting people involved, yeah, online is just so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was having a really good conversation earlier with my friend Reed Coverdale about what, like, it was kind of like a chicken or the egg conversation between like reading the stuff and then believing it, or believing it and then reading it and having you back up your beliefs. So he was talking about like how thankful he is that he's in his mid 20s now reading Anatomy of the State and all these other books for the first time, because he was expressing to me that, you know, if he had read it at like 17 or 18, it would have been a completely different thing, where he would have been basing it all on a book instead of basing it on life experience and then reading a book that backed up his life experience. So I can definitely relate there a little bit too, but I can't completely, because I definitely founded a lot of my political beliefs on not life experience and just like other people's life experience and books and stuff like that. And then I finally stepped out the front door and went to go live life and got slapped back in by the government. And I was like, oh, wow, I was right about this. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to read a book about how taxation is theft. It's a completely different thing to be an independent contractor than have to write the government a check for thousands of dollars during tax season.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you need both, but what's been more impactful for me is actually having those real world experiences.
Yeah, for sure. I had my first run in with the police was at 17, and that went horribly. Um, no, I mean, I guess that's an over exaggeration, because it could have gone a lot worse given what I've experienced since then and what other people have experienced. But in context, at the time, for me, it was like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, getting harassed by a police officer, because I was raised to like respect the police, and my mentor in like middle school and high school was a cop. My best friend's dad for like all of my entire life up to that point was a cop. Like I knew, and it was like a small town, so like I knew half the police department, it seemed like. And my first run in with them was just like horrible. Um, that was definitely like a big stepping stone in that direction. And then, you know, I've just tacked on life lesson after life lesson since then, between you know, the city shutting down a food drive to like tax policy, having to pay taxes in I had to pay 5 different types of income tax one year at the same time, because I was for the same job, because I had to pay taxes for the state that I was working in, plus the
Mhm.
state that I was living in, plus the city I was living in, because New
Ooh,
York City has income tax itself, plus federal income tax, plus there was like another weird fucking thing in there. And I was just like, how can I have to owe all of these people for the like $12 that I made? Fuck off.
honestly, one, God bless Texas. Thank you for no state income tax. That made my tax season a lot less complicated and a lot better.
Yeah, I need to move to a state that is better than mine. I need to get out of New York State very, very soon, very quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm have mixed feelings now, because I sit on the state committee for the Libertarian Party. I'm a state coordinator for the Pragmatist Caucus in the party. I'm getting really heavily involved with New York State politics through the LP, and I'm really split on this, because part of me wants to just give up on New York, but that would be giving up on all of these groups that I agreed to help with at the same time. And I would kind of feel like an asshole for doing that. So I'm I have mixed feelings about whether or not I want to just rage quit the state of New York, but it's leaning that way very heavily.
Yeah, I mean, probably at some point, even if it's not immediate, we'll have a chance to escape the Cuomo dictatorship.
Oh, I pray. Um, I really hope they freaking remove him from office. That would be the
No,
greatest thing to watch happen.
same. And it's crazy because not only is he a terrible governor who has done horrible things to his economy, to his people, but he literally killed people in nursing homes, and then he's just all around a garbage person. Like my family, my half my family is from New York, and one of my relatives actually grew up. Well, he didn't grow up, but when he was alive and working as a police officer, ironically, he worked for Cuomo's dad,
Mm.
and so he worked for Mario Cuomo, and he was around Andrew Cuomo as a teenager. And my family was all Democrats, but he made them promise to never vote for Andrew Cuomo, or support the Cuomo brothers. And they are like diehard Democrats, and they just don't support the Cuomos because he experienced like firsthand just what a bad person, just personally, Cuomo is.
Hmm. Yeah, Mario wasn't terrible. Like he had his good pieces and his bad pieces, and he was super corrupt. And him and Fred Trump were best friends, which will always make me laugh. Uh, but yeah, Andrew and Chris have been just trash since they were kids, and it's been never not at like there's I mean, Andrew literally wrecked his dad's presidential bid by being a drug addict, and then somehow still ended up our governor and actually came closer to the presidency than his dad did. Like, that's weird. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, thankfully, I would hope he never comes anywhere close to U.S. presidency. But it was really insane seeing how during the peak of COVID, everyone in the media and even people I knew were just fawning over Cuomo and how wonderful of a job he's doing. And now it's
Mhm.
finally being revealed that he was actually doing a horrible job. But at the time, it was just disgusting seeing everyone constantly praising him, uh, when in reality, he's genuinely a terrible person doing terrible things.
Hmm. Yeah, it was really disheartening for me because my church was really like I would go or I wouldn't go there. I would like watch it online because but the person like giving the announcements at the beginning would say something about like how much she loved watching Cuomo's press conferences every day. And I would talk to my friends at Bible study and stuff like that, and they would be like, well, at least Cuomo's in blah 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 blah. And I was just like you said, I'm also a non-confrontational person, especially like in person and face to face, so I just pushed it down. But it was rough. I was like, God, why do you people think this way?
Mhm.
But it would have been way too hard to convince them in that moment, like with everything that was going on. Statists were more statist than they've ever been last
Mhm.
spring. So I'm just okay. Statists gonna state, like, you guys have
Yeah,
fun. I'm gonna go promote Joe Jorgensen.
it's just got to be that way sometimes. You can't convince everyone.
Hmm. That's the beauty of libertarianism too, and just like the liberty ideals in general is like you don't have to convince everybody. That's the whole point. Is you're never going to convince everybody. You're never going to make everyone a good person. You're never going to like stop murder from happening. You're never going to like completely end rape. It's never going to happen. So like sometimes you got to just like accept the world as it is and fight for what you can change, and find the friends that are a little bit less statist than the rest and start working on them you know
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah, it's been really fun getting to actually chip away at some of my friends over the last year, because I mean, we got a pretty good "I told you so" out of the last year.
Hmm.
Like, oh, the lockdown, like 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? Like
Right.
we said from the beginning, it's a one of my favorite Friedman quotes is there is nothing more permanent than a temporary government solution.
Hmm.
Uh and
Yeah.
sorry.
No, towards the beginning when COVID was just happening at first. I mean, I didn't really know anything about the virus. I was scared. I remember I was considering going on a campaign for Yale at the time, but like I was thinking, should I? Because I live, really close to my grandparents and I don't know if I want to make that risk. And at the beginning, I was like, oh, maybe we do need to just quarantine and stay home. And so
Mhm,
my college had gone online and I was kind of just voluntarily quarantining because I didn't know what was going to happen. And
mhm.
then the minute my governor signed a stay at home order, I just lost it and was like, okay, this is crazy. This is going too far.
Mhm. Yeah, I was definitely okay with the quarantine cuz like that makes sense. Right? Like that's a logical solution to a virus. Is stay
Hmm.
away from people for a little while.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Mandatory anything is stupid.
yeah.
Like, it's not hard to make that differentiation, and so many people struggle to do that. And I got called like an anti-vaxxer and like a MAGA person and like a anti-lockdown, anti-court, like all of this. Like I, as if I wanted people to go out and cough on each other and like just make out with random strangers that wherever they went and just like spread all the germs. It was this false dichotomy that they created all year that just
Hmm.
was terrible.
And what's the most insane part is, I mean, now that we know more about the virus, like I'm not personally scared of getting it. Maybe I have gotten it in the past. I don't know how I wouldn't have, considering all the traveling and all the events I've been to. But it's really, personally, for me, I'm willing to take that risk. Like if I get COVID, I know I'm willing to accept that. I will
Mm,
probably be fine. I'm young. I'm healthy. I don't have the factors that make COVID really dangerous for a lot of the older populations or people with other conditions.
mhm,
But seeing so many other young, relatively healthy people my age go absolutely crazy and trying to shame anyone, especially other young people, for
mhm.
going out, leaving their houses, just doing things and living their lives is it's just wild.
Yeah. I I'm kind of in the same situation you are. I'm like, I don't know how I haven't caught it yet. In 2020, I worked in 14 states, knocked almost 200,000 doors, took uh like a dozen planes and half that many trains, and like there's how did I not get it? It doesn't
Hmm.
make sense. Meanwhile, I have friends, like you're saying, that I had one friend that he's part of my Bible study that went 14 days without leaving his apartment. I'm like, how? I would die. I would literally have killed myself in that situation. I'm not even like being hyperbolic. Like I would have spiraled into a fit of depression that I would not have been able to come out of if I actually spent 14 days alone in my apartment. There would be no recovering from that.
Yeah, I had to quarantine for like 3 days because someone I known might have had it, and I was waiting for my test results. And even just those 3 days, I'm an extreme introvert, but even just those 3 days alone by myself were just crazy. And I don't know how people are claiming to have done it for a year, and I still see comments online saying, "Yeah, I still don't leave my house." And it's like, how? At what point are you going to just accept that there are risks to not only COVID, but just living your life in general, there will always be risks of some new disease. There will always be a risk out there. I mean, at what point are you just going to accept that you have to live your life with some risk involved?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that that goes back to what I said a little bit ago about just knowing that you're not going to be able to fix it all and just doing it anyway. Um, yeah, it's the crazy thing is that like COVID has a higher survival rate than like flying or driving or plenty of
Mhm.
other things that people are totally fine with doing on a daily basis. Like, and that's if you caught COVID, you have a better chance of
Right.
surviving it than you do like surviving some of these other things people do. Not that's not to mention just like going out and doing life. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand the people that will let their entire lives get hijacked by a tiny little fear.
And it's crazy how so much of the policy surrounding COVID wasn't actually based on health, right?
Mm.
If we actually cared about health instead of just avoiding a virus at all costs, we wouldn't have done things like shut down gyms. You wouldn't have, scared people into staying in their homes and not going outside and getting sunlight. We would have been encouraging healthy eating to, maybe stop some of these secondary diseases that are actually bigger killers than COVID are, like heart disease and clogged arteries, right?
Mhm.
It's so much of this has not been for health, really. It's just pure politics. And I think that's what makes it so frustrating for so many of us.
Yeah, it definitely was not based in fact or science at all. And I mean, we had like the mask thing from the beginning, like Fauci telling us that not to wear masks and then it didn't matter. Like I just that's my favorite clip to just continuously like retweet and throw around because it's like, is it 7 masks now? Is that how much we're supposed to have on? Is that
Or
a
the
vac?
or the nose only masks for when you're eating.
Mm, yeah. Plus the vaccine. Like you still have to do all this with the vaccine.
Right. Like one of my professors, I mean, I love him, but he has the vaccine, but he still talks about how he is double masking when he goes on walks outside alone. Like, why?
Mm.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah, no. The people that are driving alone in their cars with a mask on annoy me too. That one that one will never make sense to me. It's like, why? I do understand if you like forgot to take it off because like I actually have one now that's fairly comfortable. And so I
Hmm.
actually do kind of forget that it's on my face sometimes. I'll like leave a store and just be walking down the street still with it on, just kind of forgetting about it. But so I understand that, but like the people that are like consciously like putting their mask on at the second they walk out their door, even when they live like in the middle of nowhere near no one, I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I could see is during winter when I was visiting family in Wisconsin, it was really nice to just be wearing a mask outside and I wasn't scared of COVID. It was just really chilly and I wanted my mask on. But
Oh
here
yeah.
in Texas, that's certainly not the case.
Hmm. Yeah, New York City a couple weeks ago was fun. Because yeah, it was before it had really warmed back up, and you have to really wear your mask no matter where you are in New York City, because whether you're following the law or just like the common sense of like masking when there's people around, because there's always people around, right? If you're walking through the streets of
Hmm.
Brooklyn, there you get 30 seconds maybe where you can kind of pull your mask down and breathe a little bit, but there's people walking by you all the time. So yeah, I can definitely relate. It was kind of nice to have my face covered and then like all bundled up, and people didn't recognize me. People just I was warm. It was a good time.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes if I'm just going somewhere and I don't want to like look good at all, I can just pick a really big mask and just like cover my face and like run to the store. That's that's definitely nice and convenient. So I will give masks that. I'm actually not super anti, like crazy anti-mask. I'm
Hmm.
just anti forced mask, and in restaurants it's kind of ridiculous how you only have to wear it part of the time. And then also at the gym, that's absolutely insane that you have to wear a mask while working out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That was the dumbest argument that I heard towards the beginning of all of this. I heard so many people talk about the people that wear masks when they work out intentionally, before this to restrict oxygen flow to train harder. And they're like, see, all these people, like, if they can climb a mountain in a mask, you can like go to the store in a mask and all this stuff. And that was the dumbest argument I think I heard, because these people wear masks in those situations because it makes it harder to breathe. Like, that's the whole point of wearing a mask when you're working out, is because it makes it harder to breathe and it makes you train harder. You're only proving
I
your point, like why we shouldn't be wearing them. Like,
Yeah, it's terrible because when you're sweating, it's really unhygienic when you're working out. Like I don't get acne, but I get acne now because I have to wear a mask when I'm working out. And that has been very annoying and something personally that I deal with every day that's just like a little bit like, thanks, thanks, Mayor Adler, for ruining my skin.
yikes. Yeah, I can actually relate there too. I thought I had kind of kicked that issue. I used to have like really bad acne in like high school, and I thought I was gone, and hmm, not as much anymore.
Yeah, really, I guess it's like a really petty problem, but it's also just something that's really annoying and shows how nonsensical all these COVID restrictions are.
Hmm. Well, I mean, government is kind of nonsensical, right?
Yeah.
As just kind of a whole. So I don't know why we expected it to be anything better than what it was.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was definitely really naive a year ago today, you know, because yeah, like when the 2 weeks to flatten the curve thing happened, I was actually one of those idiots that was like, yeah, 2 weeks sounds good. Like, that makes
Hmm.
sense. I trust you to not do this past 2 weeks. This is gonna be
Hmm.
over by the summer. Like, we'll all be back to our normal lives. Like, it's gonna be cool. Nope.
Right,
That was just
right.
some childishness.
Yeah, it's been over a year, and honestly, I have to give it to everyone in the various state governments for keeping people somehow under control for this long. Uh, because it's just amazing how people have been, at least a good amount of people, have just been going along with this 2 weeks to slow the spread for over 365 days now.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is incredible how good they are at sheep herding. I don't know. I mean, I guess my state and California and Michigan were probably the worst. They at least had some pushback on some of this stuff, but the three of them are all probably going to get removed from office before 2022 is over, and yet none of them are going to get removed because of this.
Hmm.
Like, Cuomo's going to get canned because he's a rapist, not because he killed 10,000 people or because he's literally destroyed the state over the last 10 years. That's not why he's going to get removed from office. He's going to get removed from office for some, actually, because he's not, I don't think he actually is a rapist. I don't think anybody's actually accused him of literal rape. I think it's just like sexual assault and harassment. So, like, which honestly, it's like, yeah, he's not going to get canned for murdering 10,000 people. He's going to get canned for like putting his hand on a girl's back, which, yeah, is wrong. But like, really, that's what we're going to attack him for?
Yeah, and honestly, at this point, I mean, I don't know what it's like where you're at in New York, but talking to some of the relatives I have in New York and also just seeing some of the quote unquote feminists in New York defend his actions is bizarre. It makes me wonder if even that's not going to be enough to get him out of office.
There's definitely a possibility that he still makes it through this. I don't think he wins re-election though. He almost didn't win the primary in 2018, and so I don't think he survives. I don't think he's dumb enough to run for re-election.
Yeah.
Really.
I don't know why you'd want to.
Mm-mm. Yeah, he should just quit while he's behind and just like not. It was nice to see Christian Gillibrand, our senator, was basically the first one to actually the first like nationally known person to come out against him and call for his removal. And that made me really happy because she made me really sad during her presidential run. I actually really liked her as a congresswoman, and then even her first couple of terms as senator, she wasn't bad. Like she was a blue dog Democrat, really big on fiscal conservatism. She was fairly good on gun rights. She was, I mean, not great, but she was like half decent. She wasn't like a gun grabber, right? And so, like, I actually liked her as my senator. I was pretty okay with her, and then she ran for president, and it was just like a total like neo-lib trash platform. Like she was nothing like what she used to be, and just completely changed up everything she believed in basically to run for president. And I was so sad by that. And then to see her post-presidential race become a little bit more principled again was really reassuring. And then Schumer, came pretty soon after that, and now there's a really big contingency in Albany that's working to get stuff through. He's not getting the like yes men votes that he normally does on his trash like legislation that he tries to push through the assembly. So let's look it up. I have a little bit of hope for New York.
Y'all take wins where you can find them.
Right. The problem is we're gonna like elect freaking
someone worse.
Yeah, we're gonna elect Ivanka Trump next time or some dumb shit like that.
In New York, you think that could happen?
Honestly, I think she would be the Republicans' best bet by far. I thought she should have run for mayor actually this year. I would have loved to have seen Ivanka Trump versus Andrew Yang for mayor of New York City. That would just be a fun race to watch.
That would. I would pay attention to that.
Right, the whole country would. Like that would just be a really interesting race. And we have like a pretty dope candidate from the Libertarian Party in the race, with connections and like a history and like an actual career of being an activist and doing things and doing tangible things outside of the Libertarian Party. She's actually new to the LP, so she's like untainted in a lot of ways. And so I was super excited about the possibility of like some really high profile race that would force us to at least, or it would have the whole country watching the race, and at least some of them would find the third option at some point in time and realize that there is a third option. But it doesn't look like the Republicans are going to put up anyone decent. They're literally, their primary is who can be more racist right now is kind of how it's looking. The front runner is somebody who actually like, he's cool and he's awful at the same time, because like what he did is cool, but why he did it is awful. But Sliwa is his last name. He started like the Guardian Angels, which is like a community policing thing. And so from a libertarian standpoint, it's like a non-government police, which is cool. Yeah. But he's kind of did it off of the police aren't like doing enough to stop the minorities from doing their dumb it was definitely like from not the best like basis, and some of the other people in the organization are not really that great and it's definitely been co-opted by some people that didn't think the NYPD was doing enough police brutality. And so that's not fun.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, but the Democratic primary is who can identity politics harder. So
of course.
It's super gross to watch happen because it's literally like three of my least favorite people in politics right now all fighting out like for this Democratic nomination in a city that I've almost given up on caring about at this point. I don't live in the city anymore. I'm back upstate where I grew up, and I don't see the I don't like I don't even know at this point if there's hope for that city. I wish there was, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that same way, even non-political people just trying to get out of New York City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have been the most exited state for like a decade now, almost, and I don't blame people for doing it. Like a bunch of my family isn't in here in the state anymore, and my family's been in New York State since the Germans owned it. Like my family has been a New York family like literally since before it was called New York. Back when it was New Amsterdam, my family was here. So it's weird how much of like a mass exodus from the state has happened just in my family, because no one really saw that coming. Like anybody that leaves the state from my family is like kind of shunned a little bit. Like not intentionally or really, but like it's just they kind of just fade away because they're not within like a 2-hour drive anymore. And so it's weird to see people like actually consciously making that decision and like being further from their grandkids than they would ever normally want to be. I mean, my sister is about to move to Ohio next month, and it's just a really weird thing to see happen because my family's like a really like close knit. My parents kind of got shunned because they live the farthest from my grandparents, who are like 2 hours away. The rest of my extended family is within like a 15-minute drive of each other. Like we're kind of the outsiders because we're from Syracuse instead of Buffalo. So to have people in like South Carolina and Ohio and Florida and Michigan and all these other states now, it's weird. It's really like not like my family, but I don't blame them.
Yeah, I bet that does take some getting used to. I can't really relate because none of my extended family lives anywhere near my family, and now we're just kind of all over the place.
Mm. So did you grow up in Texas?
I grew up in Wisconsin,
Hmm.
and then I went to school in Missouri, and then when COVID happened, I went back to Wisconsin for the lockdowns, and then was essentially just begging to get out of Wisconsin because at that point Wisconsin was still locked down.
Mm-hmm.
So I hopped on a congressional campaign in Georgia, and then after that went to Texas to intern for YAL. And now I live in Texas and would consider myself an honorary Texan.
Nice. Moving up in the world. Was that Gertler that you were working on?
It was Gertler, yep.
Great candidate. That he's one of those people that between him and Nick Freitas, they give me hope for the world like more than most people in politics. They're the only people that I can see like actually possibly making a difference at the national level sometime soon, because there's not a lot of like Liberty people that I think have a shot at Congress. But they both do. And Massey needs some backup because he's kind of alone there now. I am super excited about Pete Mayer though. He's also like I was very pleasantly surprised because I was
surprised for sure.
I heard some not great things about him during like or not like bad things, but just kind of like very anti-libertarian things, and like he just kind of seemed like a basic ass Republican when he was running. And then he got elected and he's like introducing the Doge Act. And I'm like, yes, this guy's cool. This guy's somehow like almost as libertarian as Justin Amash, somehow nerdier than Justin Amash and somehow cooler and more personable than Justin Amash. I didn't think any of those things were possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what they're putting in the water in Grand Rapids, but it's definitely different than what they're putting in the water in Flint. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It was because I just assumed, I'm pretty sure he was the guy who, when Amash voted to impeach Trump, he was like hopping in the race because of that. So, you would just assume he's the standard MAGA Republican, the standard big government Republican. But he's been really surprising, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I was very, very pleasantly surprised.
If you keep your expectations low enough for like government members, sometimes you can get pleasantly surprised.
Right. Just expect that they will all end up like Chairman Mao, and then you'll just be happy most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, no, because plenty of them end up worse than Chairman Mao, in my personal opinion. I think I'd take Mao over Biden right now. Not gonna lie. At least Mao, like, people understood how terrible he was. What I don't understand is these like, oh, he's so like harmless and cute and nice, and he's such a good Christian
Finally,
boy, and
decency back in the White House.
right.
What?
Ask Tara Reid how decent he is.
Yeah, he's not decent, though he's good at pretending to be decent. I mean, he's a politician, which immediately makes me, as a libertarian, dislike him, but it makes your average middle-aged suburban voter probably like him a lot more. But what has surprised me, and I guess it shouldn't surprise me, is seeing all of my friends who were huge Bernie supporters, who were out at the Black Lives Matter rallies last year, and were calling out Biden for being, racist, anti-criminal justice reform, and having them, and were, rightfully being super against him, to now just completely falling in line with everything he says. And these aren't like your average boomer Democrats. These are people my age who are actually like excited and pro Biden in a weird way, which has surprised me. But I guess this just kind of always happens with partisan people.
Yeah, the team sports will make you lose all sense of credibility or principle or logic if you're just about which jersey you have on and which jersey they have on. It's never gonna end well for you. Luckily I can't relate very much. Like the church friend group that I mentioned earlier is in there, but they weren't necessarily super pro Bernie necessarily either. They were kind of like, actually, weirdly enough, a half of my friend group from my church in New York City are Texans.
Okay.
Originally. But they're kind of like, now they're in New York City and they're like
the
leftist.
opposite of most people.
Yeah. I did not realize that a lot of people went from Texas to New York, but I guess if you're a leftist in Texas, you need to run away too. I do understand that. But they're kind of just like non-political, kind of moderate centrist kind of people. So, they just buy into the mainstream media narrative because they don't pay attention enough to know all the facts to avoid it. And so, yeah, I mean, Trump is a racist neo-Nazi and Biden is returning order to the country. Like, that's the narrative that they've been fed. And so they're happy about it. And honestly, there's a part of me that doesn't want to tell them the truth because I'm just happy that a bunch of the country now has like some mental health stability again. And like,
yeah,
I part of me wants some of these people to get lulled back to sleep in a way, because just the vitriolic hatred and opposition to Trump that didn't do anything good uh, just needed to stop. Like I'm actually like kind of okay in a way with like letting, if you want to be non-political and you if you don't know what you're talking about, then just like go back to living your normal life and ignore politics if you're going to be a sheeple.
Yeah, on one hand, I guess on one hand, I disagree almost because it was really nice to see people, even if it wasn't for the right reasons, just be anti-Trump and therefore anti-government.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, I definitely agree that most people, they're happier if they just ignore politics. I mean, honestly,
Hmm.
good for them. Like, we're the weird ones in that we're super involved. We're the nerdy ones who want to read the news and who want to be involved, but most people, they're the normal ones out there. So it's
Hmm.
always funny to see libertarians and people in the liberty movement just complaining about normal people when in fact we are pretty weird, and I'm always willing to admit that I'm weird. Everyone I work with is weird. People involved in politics are just weird. So in a way, yeah, good
Hmm.
for the normal people who are just going about living their lives and finding ways to be happy without getting super involved in politics.
Yeah, that I think what you're hitting on, I think one of the biggest problems in America right now, and just it was a slow, gradual deterioration, but it's really like finalized over the last 50 years or so, that politics is an elitist thing now, and it's a thing that like you have to, like you said, be a nerd and care about to even like pretend that you have a say or know what you're talking about. Like
I
the
mean, was it ever not elitist though?
I feel like at least when we founded the country, there was, our representatives were farmers and blacksmiths and, people that were like had a life and then went to Congress for a short period of time to do Congress thing and then came back. There wasn't a necessity to have a doctorate or in like a JD or like a master's in some crazy something and be a lawyer and all of these other boxes that we check now. But
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can definitely see that. Though what is really nice about only working on local level politics is that a lot of those, crazy qualifications and those crazy barriers that keep normal people from getting involved aren't
Mhm.
quite as present. Like in New Hampshire, for example, you can win a state rep race with only $600 on average. And the districts are so tiny that it's super easy for an average person who they all have to have normal jobs because session is only a few weeks once every few years to be involved.
Mhm.
So that's definitely nice about staying on the more local level is that you
Mhm.
can get more and more just normal, non-intimidating, scary, uh, as we'd say, like nerdy elitist people involved.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed some of the people I've gotten to be able to work with. I know you've gotten to work with a whole host more, being on the organizing side of it. Uh, it is refreshing to take a step back from the national and like the statewide like big propagandized races and just focus on a tiny little state house district. Like New Hampshire is fun. New Hampshire is really fun.
Yeah. And honestly, those local races, there's so much like when you're out there knocking doors for those races at the local level, people don't care as much about party or about the national events. I've had people say that they're going to vote for the candidates that I showed up at their door for simply because I was there and I was willing to knock on their door
Hmm.
because I told a nice story about how the candidate volunteered at a food drive, um, or how they were Democrat, but it was just so nice seeing a young person involved. Like they'll go and vote for our candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at least at the local level, politics is a lot less toxic than the national level.
For sure. I definitely got my fair share of like, is he a Trump supporter? Like being the
Oh, for
first
sure.
question. And that's the worst when they say it like that, because you don't know how to answer. Because
Hmm.
you have no idea what answer they're looking for. It's
Right.
like, am I supposed to downplay this, or am I supposed
Yeah.
to like be like, well, he's a Republican and he supports the presidency and so blah. Like you have no idea how to answer just the point blank question of, is he a Trump supporter?
Hmm.
Because unfortunately, yes, in most of
Are
these scenarios.
Are they gonna yell at you if he is? Are they gonna yell at you if he's not? Who knows?
Mhm. I got plenty of both. Um, it was very interesting. I was actually like a straight up political mercenary in 2020. Towards the end, I definitely took some jobs that I regret. Um, but I mean, yeah, throughout 2020, I worked for Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. So that was super
Wow,
fun. Yeah.
that's all over the place.
Yeah, well, actually, Lindsey Graham and Trump were at the same time. That was in South Carolina, along with Nancy Mace, working for Mobilize the
Okay.
Message. So that was fun. Didn't love that. Got out of there pretty quickly. But yeah, and then the Biden. I didn't actually work directly for the campaign. I worked for a nonprofit it's like a workers' rights pack that was also supporting a local candidate and a Senate candidate in North Carolina. But really, I took the job because a good friend of mine who is a petitioner got an organizer's job on this, and all of our friends are petitioners. I'm the only person in our circle that has a shit ton of door knocking experience. So
Hmm.
she wanted me there because she knew that I had that experience and could kind of help turn these petitioners into door knockers. And so it was literally a favor to my friend, and I cared nothing about the candidate. And if the person at the door gave me any kind of a pushback that they weren't going to vote for Biden, or that they hated Biden, or that they hated Trump, I would bring up Joe Jorgensen fucking 100 times a day at least. It was great. It was so much fun. I would tell people about Joe. I would tell people to just not vote if they didn't want to. There were so many people that were just, I don't think I'm gonna vote this year. It's like, well, have you heard about any of these third party candidates? And they'd be like, yeah, but they all sound stupid. And I was like, you know what, you're not wrong. They kind of are. Some of them are. Like, we got our issues, so yeah, if you don't want to, don't. That's cool. Like, and I actually got fired because I was doing
Oh,
a bad job at promoting Joseph Biden, apparently. But yeah, it was a weird scenario. But the the Carolinas were my favorite, actually, because yeah, I worked North and South Carolina. They seem to be the most like down to earth of the places that I worked last year, of just caring about these local candidates and what they stand for and what they actually believe. And like Nancy Mace's was a great candidate to work for because her resume is stacked.
hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
and she was running against a really good person, in my opinion, also. Like, it was such a clean race between two hyper qualified candidates who both like knew how to politic quite well, and it was just a good situation to be in, coming out of just like the vitriol of like the Democratic primary, working for Tulsi.
Hmm.
It was nice, refreshing.
Yeah. I bet it was. So that is crazy going from Trump to Biden all in one so so short a period of time.
Yeah, and with really only like one other campaign, well, a campaign and two petitions, I guess, between them. But yeah, it was getting towards the end of the cycle. I wasn't gonna go back to working for Trump Jorgensen wasn't paying, and my friend asked me to come to North Carolina, and I was like, all right, this sounds like a fun way to spend the last week and a half of the election.
Yeah, why not? I don't think I've ever door knocked or supported a Democrat candidate that I can remember. Aside from the fact that I voted for Tulsi in the Democratic primary, but besides that, I've definitely not had that much variety in the candidates that I've worked for. So props to you.
Yeah, going into 2020, I had only ever worked for libertarians. Like, I had never worked for a duopoly candidate, and I always thought that I like never would. And then yeah,
Then you
Tulsi.
realize that the
Yeah.
libertarians don't pay you anything and you kind of have to work for one of the main parties.
Right. Which is why I really liked petitioning, because you don't have to pick a team. I could petition for something that is super libertarian, and still get paid for it. And it's not shunned or pushed down because it has an L next to it, because it doesn't have an L next to it. It doesn't have an R or a D either. It's just this idea. Like, I got to help them stop the ban on flavored tobacco in California. I helped them I circulated the Unlock Michigan petition, as well as a gay rights petition in Michigan. Like things that I actually believe in and care about, which is so much more fun than knocking doors for Donald Trump. Because that was gross. But before we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where to find you, how to get involved with YAL, like how they can help make your life easier and more fun.
Yeah, well, if you want to find me, you can find me on social media as Naomi Mathew. My Twitter handle's at Naomi Math. If you just search me on Facebook, I should come up. Or if you want to email me, if you have questions about getting involved in YAL, my email is just my first name, last name at yaliberty.org. And in terms of getting involved in the fight for liberty, it really just depends on where you are and what you want to do. So if you are thinking about running a campaign someday, come to one of our Liberty Candidate Academies, get trained on how to be a good principled Liberty candidate, but still take those establishment tactics and those successful tactics so you can, advance your ideas and actually win and push legislation at the state level. If you are a candidate, really the main website, if you just want a website to go to, is yaliberty.org/door, because it'll take you to the resources to either learn how to be a candidate, to contact us and get involved if you're thinking about running in the future, if you're running and want to fill out our candidate survey, or if you're on campus like I was a few years ago, get involved in a local group or start one. That really is, like I said earlier, what took me from being, I hate to use this word, but yeah, black pilled to white pilled once again. But I know things are definitely crazy right now, but working at YAL always gives me a lot of hope for the future. And so I'd say definitely still get involved in the liberty movement and don't give up.
Amen. Get involved and don't give up. I like that. Well, Naomi, thank you so much for coming on. This was absolutely great. Definitely look forward to getting to hang out in person at Revolution, or maybe before then, because I might be in Texas here pretty soon anyway.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks. This was fun, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm David, and this has been The Fight for Liberty.